All right. Okay, everybody. We're going to get started this morning. I'm taking over for Cliff today. You'll have to forgive me because I woke up this morning and I was going over my sermon, and I completely forgot that I had this today, that I was the one taking over. So I didn't do a whole lot of prior thinking into this. But what we are doing, somebody chuckled. Oh, usual suspect. No, it's just usual circumstances. Oh, the digs are beginning. But this is just a continuation of what we've been doing in the young adults class, the teen class, and we've been going through Genesis. In fact, coming up probably within the next few weeks, we're going to have, when we close the book of Genesis, Caleb, I hope you're listening, we're going to have all the teens come up here one Sunday morning and give another presentation on, shadows of Christ, types of Christ in the book of Genesis, which will be really, really interesting, really helpful. So if you would, go ahead and open up your Bibles to Genesis chapter 45. Genesis chapter 45. We've been studying extensively in the life of Joseph. Not too extensive because, young adults and teens, I don't want to get too deep into it. But we've been studying his life. We've been trying to point out all the things that Joseph has gone through, all the things that he's done, how God's been with him, and trying to relate that to Christ, how you really can see Christ in the life of Joseph. And let's see, where are we now? At this point, Joseph is getting ready to reveal himself to his brothers. There's been some tests going on. Joseph has been testing his brothers. Come back with your little brother. Prove to me that you are not spies. They didn't recognize him because it had been quite a number of years since they've seen their little brother. And not only that, not only the age, but remember, he's Egyptian royalty. So he has most likely no hair, makeup on, because that's what Egyptian royalty did. And he's very much unrecognizable to them. Well, he's getting ready to finally reveal himself. He cannot hold this back any longer. Now, when we get into this, when I read it by myself, you think the guy's just got to be so angry, so upset with his brothers after what they've done. But as we're going to get into chapter 45, you'll see Joseph has a really, really good theological understanding for what is happening to him and why. And all of the pain, all of the suffering that he's been through, God has made good on it. And he has no reason, really, to blame them for what they did. He loves his brothers. He loves his family so much. He's missed them very, very much. So this is a class. If you have a question, a comment, if you want to contribute in any way, please keep your hand down. Verse 1. Then Joseph could not control himself before all those who stood by him. He cried, "Make everyone go out from me." So no one stayed with him when Joseph made himself known to his brothers. And he wept aloud so that the Egyptians heard it, and the house of Pharaoh heard it. Genesis 45, 1 and 2. Sorry, I thought I said that. So he's crying now. And the question that, I would normally pose to the teens, I kind of already gave you the answers. Why is he crying? Why is he weeping? That is a question. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Do you think there's any hatred for his brothers in his heart? It does not seem like it. Why not? Now, if it were me, look, I'm a creature of the flesh. I get tempted just like anybody else. If it were me, man, I'd rub it in their face so hard. But Joseph doesn't take that course of action here. Why doesn't he? Like I said, I kind of already gave you the answer. Go ahead, Beth. Huh? No, you go ahead. Give me your thoughts. Yeah.
wasn't so bad. He didn't know anything else. I mean, he was so young when he was sold to the Egyptians.
Yeah.
Yeah, really his character was built on what his surroundings were at this time. So he had it pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe he never really thought twice about what his brothers did to him.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it wasn't until later in his life that he had it pretty good. He went through a lot of bad stuff. He was a slave in Potiphar's house. He was accused of rape. He was thrown into prison. He was forgotten by the cupbearer. So he went through some bad stuff. Go ahead. And then I'll get to He always what? That is the key. You'll notice that every time he changes location, Potiphar's house or the jail, it always says God made his plan succeed in everything that he did. He knew that God was with him. And that could really contribute to why he was not mad at his brothers, because he knew God was making literally everything that happened to him turn out into success. Go ahead, Ted.
All of that is true.
Mm-hmm.
All of that is true. But I think we need to take the fact that there's two short sentences right next to each other, and the first thing we find on his mind is my father's still alive.
Yeah, we'll get to that here in a moment.
I think that's the key
Yeah,
to why he's so emotional.
yeah,
He probably wondered about he knew that his brothers hated him, but he knew that his father loved him.
yep,
And he wants to know the first thing, my dad's still alive.
yep. And on that note, let's get into verse 3, because we only covered the first two verses. Bouncing off what Ted said, Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph. Now, at that statement, do you think there was like any shock in them? Now, question I'd like to pose to the kids, okay? Had his brothers been thinking about Joseph at all over the course of I think it's like 15 years, 17 years, somewhere in there? Had his brothers been thinking about him at all? Had they felt guilty for what they had done to him? Go ahead, Bill. Yeah, they sell them to the Ishmaelites, which of course come from Ishmael. He says that later, yeah, yep. Do we know of anything about them regretting taking the money after selling Joseph into slavery? I'm looking for it right now. Is there something back there? Yeah, Reuben did, because he was away when they did that. Reuben was the older brother. Oh, yeah. Yep. And Reuben probably, because remember, Reuben was away when they decided, okay, let's sell him into slavery. And then Reuben came back and found out. He probably did not let them forget about that for a day. Now, why he didn't tell his father? Go ahead. Yeah. Yep. Is there any hint of them talking about it later on, years down the line? Okay, go to Genesis 42, verse 22. No, verse 21. This is after the brothers are told, leave Simeon here, go get your younger brother. That's what Joseph says to them. And they said to one another, verse 21, they said to one another, in truth we are guilty concerning our brother, in that we saw the distress of his soul when he begged us, and we did not listen. Now, is that talking about Simeon, or is that talking about Joseph? Let's keep reading. That is why this distress has come upon us. And Reuben answered them, did I not tell you not to sin against the boy? but you did not listen. So now there comes a reckoning for his blood. So they must have had guilty consciences years later over this. They must have been like meticulously looking at every bad thing that happened to them along the way and thinking, is this God's punishment? Is this God's punishment for what we've done? Because that's really what a guilty conscience does. At least a guilty conscience that believes in God and believes in His justice. If you know you're guilty of something and you haven't even repented of it, you haven't tried to make it right, you are looking for strikes at you from God. You are. So there is some guilt. They have been thinking about him. And to all of a sudden see their brother there, Joseph say, I am Joseph, would have been the shock of the century. Plot twist. Even Luke, I am your father, doesn't have anything on that. Let's keep going. It says, I am Joseph. Going back to Genesis 45:3. I am Joseph. Is my father still alive? We're going to bounce off of what Ted said. Why is he asking about his father? Why his father? He loved his father very much. Now, we all know that Jacob in his life had a problem with favorites, okay? We all know that. But even in that wrong choice of favorites, Joseph was blessed by the love that he had for his father. And he's been wondering this whole time, is my father alive? He wants to know. He missed his father very, very much. But his brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed at his presence. Well, yeah, I wouldn't be able to say anything at first either. Be pretty shocking to know, oh, hey, it's Joseph. Oh, we sold you. How you doing, buddy? Yeah, I can't see a very cordial conversation happening right at the start of that reveal. Any comments or questions on verse 3? Yeah. Right, and we're going to get into that here in a second. Yeah, they are terrified. We'll get into that here in a second more. Yep. Verse 4. So Joseph said to his brothers, come near to me, please. And they came near. And he said, I am your brother, Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. He had to say it again. He had to say it again because that much of a shocking claim tends to not, it's so much of a shock to your system, you don't really set it into your mind and into your heart. Verse 5. And now do not be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here. For God sent me before you to preserve life. I love this verse. Okay? He first says, don't be stressed out. Don't be distressed. Don't be angry with yourselves. Now, are his brothers ones to be angry with themselves over this matter? Has that been shown that that's a possibility? What follower of God, what lover of God, when they do wrong and they sin, doesn't get angry at themselves? I do. I think almost every true lover of God, when you do something you know is wrong, later on you're angry at yourself. And he knows that. He knows that even though his brothers did wrong in selling him into slavery, because of their own jealousy, their own envy, whatever it was, he knows that they still loved God. They still served him. They served the one God of all the earth, Yahweh, and they would be feeling angry with themselves. And he reassures them, don't be distressed or angry with yourselves. Why does he have to say that? Not just because he wants to give them relief, but from, the stress of guilt, but why else? Terry hinted at it when he was talking. If you saw your brother years later that you sold into slavery, told your father, oh yeah, he died, here's his bloody robe. What are you thinking? He He's going to kill us. We're dead. We are so dead. And Joseph knows that. And he's saying, look, don't stop. Don't be distressed. I'm your brother. Don't be distressed. I know what you did was evil, but God had a purpose and a plan for it the entire time. And that's what he says. The end of verse 5, for God sent me before you to preserve life. I love so much, and I've talked about this so much, I love the sovereignty of God in human suffering. Because I really believe Romans 8:28, that for those who love God, God works everything together for good. I love that so much. It is the only way for human suffering to mean anything at all except for, well, kiddo, I'm so sorry that happens. That's not biblical at all. Instead, you have God working in human will to accomplish something for the betterment of that person that got hurt, as well as the people who hurt them, as well as others around them. That is the sovereignty of God in human suffering. And I rejoice in that. Maybe you can think of a time in your life when something bad happened to you. And you wonder, why, God? Why? But then later, and maybe you haven't had this moment yet. Maybe you have, maybe you haven't. Later you realize, I have it a lot better now because of God than I did beforehand. Thank you, God, for bringing me through that darkness. And that's what Joseph is in effect saying here. You guys feel stressed and angry at yourselves. You're worried I'm going to kill you, whatever. Don't be, because God had a plan the entire time. In fact, he says that quite a few times. The best time is in Genesis 50, verse 12. No, verse 20. Yeah, Genesis 50, verse 20. As for me, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring it about that many people should be kept alive as they are today. Because of Joseph being there, and I think we talked about this last Sunday, Caleb, I can't remember, remind me if we did. Because of Joseph being there, not only was he able to advance in Egyptian society, not only was he able to be the first biblical prepper, no, that was Noah. He's the second one, okay, in providing grain for all of Egypt, but he also provided salvation for his family because of God. Did we touch on that? I love that so much. Any comments or questions on verse 5? Go ahead, Brett.
Have you ever wondered if
No.
maybe some of the distress that they felt was now the truth's going to come out, they're going to have to tell it.
Ooh. Oh, that's a good one.
The disappointment he's going to have in them.
Yeah, because they would have everything racing through their mind, all the possibilities, all the consequences now coming to bear. Oh, man, yeah. That's a lot of stress. You ever...
Maybe even more so than them being killed.
Yeah.
Because they
Rather be dead than this, and the secret be brought to my grave than...
because of what the distress they put their father through.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's good.
That had to be, I think, kind of, I was thinking about it too,
Yeah.
they may not have felt so guilty until they seen what it did to their father.
Exactly, man. Yes.
Because they didn't have much of a conscience to do something like that anyway.
Yeah.
To sell their brother, even though he was
Yeah.
favored and
When they saw their own sins effect on other people's lives.
it affected them.
Yes.
Because of the love they had for him. I think that's maybe more to play than
Oh, yeah.
because I know,
I got chills thinking about that.
is you don't want to disappoint your parents.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I remember being a teenager and doing stuff that I shouldn't have been doing. I can't remember a particular time amongst the thousands. But I remember being a teenager, doing stuff that I shouldn't have been doing. And then when the threat of it coming out to my parents hit my gut, oh man. Yeah. That's worse than death. I would have rather died. Yeah, good point. They're worried about that too. Go ahead, Terry.
I think somebody already said this, but keeping families together, like a lot of families today, the worst possible thing you could do is lie.
Yeah.
And here's where all of them except for one had lied to their dad.
Yeah.
And that's gotta be really, really bad.
Oh, yeah.
But also there's something else, and I know you guys talk about
Sure.
class. Back in chapter 23, it talks about how he's with his brothers, they don't know who he is yet.
Mm-hmm.
And the Egyptians in the room ate with him by themselves. And then it says, because the Egyptians could not eat bread with the Hebrews, for that is loathsome to the Egyptians.
Yeah.
And my Senator Kyle references here, it's the word abomination.
Mm-hmm.
The Egyptians didn't like the Hebrews
No.
at all. And they didn't really want them in their country.
Mm-hmm.
So these guys know they're down in Egypt because times are tough. They came down to see if they could get some food.
Yeah.
But they didn't even know coming down to get some food would be get home safe.
Mm-hmm.
Which is one reason they never bring food to them.
Yeah.
They were afraid they might get killed just for going down there and buying food.
Good point.
Here's the number 2 guy
Mm-hmm.
in Egypt who's now there, and you know, they're terrified
Mm-hmm.
of this whole thing.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Right to be terrified. Because
Yes.
when he says, I'm Joseph, you can just see it in their head.
Yeah.
I'm a dead man right now.
Yeah, I try to picture the look on their face. Yeah. Oh, man. Any other comments on verse 5? Go ahead.
They didn't say like Hebrews in general, they didn't like Hebrews.
Yes, it says that earlier. Yep. Yep, absolutely. Question for you. I've tried to look it up. Do you know why they hated sheep herders specifically? Okay. Go ahead, Bill.
A lot of, like, out west, they hated sheep where they settled because sheep would go all the way down to the ground and kill all the grass and stuff.
Okay.
Cows only go down a little bit and they don't eat the roots. You know, so sheep graze so hard on things that it makes grazing harder for them. I don't know if that's the reason or
I
not.
think that's true, but I think it had more to do with the fact that they just thought that they were something dirty.
Just dirty animals? The sheep or? Oh. Gotcha.
They didn't eat lamb, they had tons of fish
Yeah.
and other things that they thought was
Tastier. Yeah, gotcha. Okay. And then,
Reuben were split second when Joseph acknowledged who he was, looked at his brothers and said he was going to kill them because he got him into another finance.
do I, wait, so, do I think Reuben like looked at his brothers when Joseph revealed himself?
Told you not to do that.
I told you not.
Look at the fine messenger.
It might be possible, like looked at his brothers, yeah. But then, even Reuben is not necessarily innocent. Yeah, they did this behind his back. He didn't want this to happen, but he also didn't tell his dad for all those years, watching his dad break down in tears when they first told him, and for years on end, this secret that could have at least given him relief, he didn't tell him. So, in a way, Reuben is just as guilty as his brothers, just inadvertently. He's passively guilty instead of actively guilty, is what I would say. So he might have looked at his brothers, yeah, because he brought it up earlier that, look, just because you guys, you did this, and now, yeah, very possible. And about any other comments? Yeah, go ahead.
So, was Reuben the oldest?
Yes.
See, he should have taken control of the whole situation and said, we're not doing this.
Well, originally he did because they suggested to kill him, and he said, no, absolutely not. Can't remember what happens. I'm going to go away. And they decided, okay, well, let's at least sell him. Yeah.
I had to run back and run the both of those again. So, they sold him into slavery while Reuben was gone?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Go ahead, Ted.
The Egyptians raised only small numbers of cattle and sheep for both their byproducts, wool, and milk. I never knew this before. The shepherds, on the other hand, raised large amounts of these herds for meat.
Okay.
Because shepherds raised cattle for meat, they were abhorred by the Egyptians because that wasn't their first. They actually worshipped the cow.
Yeah.
A lot of other animals. Nomadic people didn't. They depended on them for a food source.
Yeah. So eating that food was like just nasty to them?
Like I said, cows were worshipped,
Yeah.
and hence that sheep by the Egyptians might have been considered unclean,
Sure.
so there's no way that they would eat them,
Yeah.
but Hebrew people did.
Yeah. Okay. Good stuff. All right, we're moving on to verse 6. Hold on, flip over, Nathan. For the famine has been, so this is Joseph still speaking here. For the famine has been in the land these 2 years. That's why I say he might be 17, I can't remember. And there are yet 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvest. And God sent me before you, he says it again, to preserve for you a remnant on earth and to keep alive for you many survivors. You have two things going on here. Number one, he reaffirms that his very strong held belief, God did this. He did this for good. Okay? It's probably the knowledge that got him through all the bad stuff that was happening to him. Even when he was a slave in Potiphar's house and when he was in jail, he didn't know the end from the beginning like we do. We don't know what God's going to do with our pain and suffering while we're going through it. But at least he seemed to have held on to that belief that, no, God will make good out of this. That is what he does. That is what he always does for his people. And then he says, God did this, why? To preserve for you a remnant on earth and to keep alive for you many survivors. Really, really important teaching here. It's not so much that God did this for the Egyptian people. He did not do that for them. He did this for his own people. Now, how this idea gets conveyed in the rest of biblical thought is that when you are around God's people, you enjoy the benefits. Even if you're not one of God's people, you enjoy some of the benefits that emanates from God's blessing on them. Okay? Whether that's charitable acts, a good person to talk to, a whole bunch of different things, because God blesses his people. And Egypt is being blessed not so much for their sake, but for God's people's sake. Okay? He says he did this to preserve a remnant for you. Why? That is the question. Go ahead. I know you're going to say it. Go ahead, say it.
Well, there's too many things, I think, going on.
It's fine.
And I'll let you do details, but one of them is prophetic into the future as a type of Christ.
Yes.
And the other one is fulfillment of prophecy given back at the time of Abraham that there would be a great nation.
Yes.
Both of those things are happening at the same time.
Yep. Those two things. Number one, let's start with the not so much tinier one. But you know what I mean. God promised to Abraham to make a great nation out of him. Would God's faithfulness and his promise-keeping ability, would that be in question if he lets his people die? Of course. Yep, absolutely. And then number two, although they may not know it in extreme detail, like we try to, okay, God still has to bring about his Messiah. He promised this all the way back in Genesis 3. He promised about the seed, the offspring, singular, okay, that will come from the woman who's going to crush the head of Satan, He's going to bruise his heel, but he'll crush his head. Okay? God still has to bring about the Messiah, particularly through the Jewish people. So he must preserve them. He must preserve a remnant, something that is left over. Okay? The idea of the remnant is, it's like when you're chopping down a tree, and what's left over is the stump, and you just leave it there. Or like this, I like this one a lot better. Like, you take a bundle of sticks and you throw it into a barrel that's on fire, okay? So you can burn them, whatever. And at the last second, for whatever reason, you pull out a stick from the flame, and it's still burning, it's still hot, but it's saved from the flame. It's like that. God's doing that on purpose because he has to bring about the Messiah to save the world. Okay? Any comments or questions on verse 7? 7. Go ahead. As a type of Christ, yep. That's what I thought you were talking about. Yeah, you're right. He is using Joseph. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Are symbolically things that Christ will do when he comes.
Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I wonder if there's a... Hold on. I had a biblical reference for that, but it's gone. I'm not going to try to dig it out of my brain again. But yes, he's right. Joseph, God uses people's stories in the Bible all the time in order to point to Christ. If their story ends before its time, well, the author doesn't get to use them to point to Christ later. Okay? So yes, he needs Joseph alive. He needs his family alive to point to Christ and show his saving ability. Okay, any other? Go ahead.
So I have two things in regard to that. And Joseph, just the fact that Joseph forgave his brothers
Yeah.
when they didn't deserve it. I mean, he just forgave them. He said, don't worry about it. That is an example of what Christ has done for us.
Yeah, exactly.
Two, sometimes when you cut down trees and stumps, those stumps will continue to grow and you'll get shoots out of those
Oh,
trunks.
yeah.
And you'll get a big tree out of it if you don't keep knocking it down. There are certain trees that will send out roots and runners,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll grow up again.
There we go.
So even though you cut a stump down, you have that remnant that's there, but that remnant will flourish.
Yeah.
It will become a huge tree.
Yeah. Let me bounce off of him for a second, Ted. So, yeah, you brought up a good point. Joseph forgiving his brothers, even though they did this to him, is a powerful illustration to the forgiveness that Christ offers. Because even to the people who directly crucified Jesus, okay, what does he say to them? Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. Something that Stephen reiterated later before he died. Forgive them, they know not what they do. Okay? And then also extended to all of us. Favorite hymn, How Deep the Father's Love for Us. Verse 2, it was my sin that held him there. Very personal. If we as human beings collectively and individually had not sinned against God, what happened to Jesus would never have been necessary. So in effect, passively, we're responsible. No, actively, we are responsible for it. Passively, actively, you know what I mean. Go ahead, Ted.
So someplace on my computer, I've got a list of 15 or 20 things in Joseph's life that are types of what Jesus would do.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember them all, but Joseph maybe has the most of those of anybody in the story of Genesis.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Genesis, the way the Bible's constructed on another level, Genesis has the most of those kinds of things per chapter than
Any other book, man. Yeah.
So it's almost like the author, God, starts out the Old Testament by not only telling us the story of how things were created and things got through to the time of Israel,
Mm-hmm.
through Genesis, etc., with
Yeah.
Abraham, Isaac, Jacob,
Yeah.
et cetera, et cetera. They're just all over in there.
Absolutely.
Once he gets to the rest of the Pentateuch,
Mm-hmm.
the story changes in a way where we don't get those story type things, we get the symbols in the law.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, you go through the rest of the Old Bible, you got, the Old Testament, you got things like, David here and against Goliath and spotty things. but
Spotty
that's
things.
basically bringing the king, and then
Yeah.
you end up with the more detailed prophecies at the end with the prophets.
Yeah.
So it's like it's moving in a progression from one way to another, but Genesis has that story concentration of how the people that are being told about have these attributes of that coming Messiah
Yeah.
predicted in the first,
Yeah.
like in the third chapter.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, there's more massive levels of foreshadowing in Genesis about Jesus than any other book in the Old Testament.
No, it's not more massive in general foreshadowing, it's foreshadowing in the story being told. Because there's a massive amount of foretelling in the rest of the
Yep.
Pentateuch
Mm-hmm.
for things like the law.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
A lot of foreshadowing and things that are being told in the prophets.
Yep.
But it's the way that Genesis, they're crude.
Mm-hmm.
They're storytelling techniques
Yeah.
that are foreshadowing
Yeah.
in Genesis. That's different.
Yeah.
That's why when Jesus says that, or when the gospel writers say that he went back and he explained what was going on from prophets and from Moses,
Mm-hmm.
he's given them two different kinds
Mm-hmm.
of ways that he says I was predicted.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Anything to add to that? It's good stuff, right? Okay, let's move. What time is it? What time does class end here? In here? Okay. All right, so we got time. All right, let's see. Verse 8. So it was not you who sent me here, but God. He says it a third time. This is a part of who Joseph is. It is what has gotten him through his life. And if you don't think you can pull something from that, man, oh man, you're missing something in your life. Always be looking for that. It is such a blessing to know that God will take the good and the bad that happens to you and use it for your ultimate good, his people's ultimate good, other people around you. I love that so much. But he says it again. It's not you who sent me here, but God. So this is still bouncing off of that, the sovereignty of God. I love this so much. It's not you who sent me here. But wait a minute, didn't they do it? Yes. Yes, they did. But God. God is the one who sent them there, sent him there. But they were the ones that chose it. Yeah, but God as the author is the one writing the story the whole time. This is the struggle that exists in human beings trying to comprehend, and don't try to comprehend it. You'll land into one of two camps. God's sovereignty, even over humans' will and actions without taking away their will. I love that so much. It really puts on full display God's power that we cannot even comprehend. I love it so much. Let's continue. He has made me a father to Pharaoh, and lord of all of his house, and ruler over all the land of Egypt. Hurry and go up to my father, and say to him, thus says your son Joseph, God has made me lord of all Egypt. Come down to me, do not tarry. So like somebody said earlier, who's giving this message back in the land of Canaan to Jacob? Who's going to be sending this message? Joseph tells who to go give this message to his father, Jacob? Who's he talking to? His brothers. So yeah, whoever said it, that secret's coming out. They're probably going to go there and tell him exactly what Joseph said. I'm alive. I'm leader, ruler over all the land of Egypt. Come down to me. And then he's going to start asking questions. He was alive? This whole time my son's alive? And eventually what's going to happen? the sons are going to go, well, Dad, we got something to tell you. I mean, can you imagine the awkward conversation? Yeah, they would.
You're the one that wanted to do it in the first place. Yeah, but you're the one that actually gave them the money.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. That whole conversation, the way home, would have been very interesting to listen to. Oh, yeah, that's right. He kept Benjamin. Yep.
Can you imagine that, Dad? Not only did we, his favorite son, but we just lost the youngest son.
Yeah. I mean, and remember what I think it was either Judah or Levi and also Reuben said, if we don't bring Benjamin home, take our kids, kill him. But they'll alleviate him when they say, but don't worry, Benjamin's in good hands. Joseph's kind of alive. Yeah, just crazy. Go ahead, Dave. Oh, did you have? Oh, okay. Go ahead, Jerry. And that's all he says. That's where it ends. Because they would. Oh. Mm-hmm. Yep. God makes good endings. He really does. Go ahead, Beth. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep.
But I didn't realize that, I guess I didn't really think about that God uses sin
Mm-hmm.
for his holiness, for his good.
An author uses bad events in a story to magnify his goodness. Yeah, a lot.
That actually happens a lot.
Yeah. God can use it for his purposes without touching it so that he's, because he's not sinful. He's a perfectly holy being. Yeah, good point. Okay, okay, Terry, last one, and then we're gonna end.
I thought in the past that we don't hear anything from Joseph in the text of how he handled all of this for all those years.
Mm-hmm.
But I found a little thing that made me talk about it, and I know you talked about it in chapter 41. Joseph has two kids.
Yes.
They haven't come down yet.
Mm-hmm.
He named the first one Manasseh.
Mm-hmm.
Words have meaning.
Yes, they do.
It means forgetting.
Mm.
Or he said, God has made me forget all my trouble and all my father's household.
Here we are.
He didn't know if he was ever going to see his father or his brothers anymore.
Yep.
But he praises God for helping him to get on with his life
Mm-hmm.
and let it go,
Let it go.
including letting go of his troubles.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And then he had a second son named Ephraim, and Ephraim means
Fruitful.
making fruitfulness. Or he said, God has made me fruitful
Mm-hmm.
in the land of my affliction.
Mm-hmm.
They had two boys. One of them he named says forgetful, because I've forgotten the past. And the other one fruitful,
Mm-hmm.
God has taken care of me here.
Yeah.
So that says something about how Joseph coped with this life,
You're right.
where he didn't know yet
Yeah.
that his brothers were going to come down there.
Mm-hmm. Good point. Very good point. Yeah. I'd mess with my son if I named him Forgetfulness. Every time he come up, Daddy, who are you? Okay. That's where we're going to end it. Good class, everybody. Love y'all.